Well, good afternoon, and thanks for taking time. Certainly good to see everybody here and be able to spend a few minutes with you. 7 months ago, back in July of 2013, Senator Casey and I created the bipartisan Veteran Backlog Working Group. And today, the reason for this announcement is we are joined not only by members of that group, but as a result, we're introducing the 21st Century Veterans Benefit Delivery Act, a piece of legislation that will drop this afternoon. We're also releasing our report on the VA backlog. You see a copy of it there on the podium, but we also have this copy here that I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to take a look at and get a chance to see what this report has done. We've had staff, both Senator Casey's office, my staff, and others who have worked very, very hard in putting this document together. I want to thank my staff for their hard work, both Josh and Scarlett for their effort to produce this, because it's real good work. What this report shows, what this comprehensive report shows, is where we've been, what we're doing today, and hopefully where we're going to be in the future. And it reports is categorized on three critical areas. One is claim submission, how a veteran submits that claim, practices at the VAROs, the VA regional offices, and also government practices on addressing VA records. So the question is why are we doing this? And I think that's a pretty good question. Why are we doing this? I want to give you some examples. We're doing this because of this backlog. Soldiers. A soldier who lost an eye and the use of his right arm and leg from an IED explosion waited more than 18 months to get his compensation. Because of this backlog, a woman who flew a Black Hawk helicopter and was involved in a crash that resulted in a broken back and a spinal fusion was forced to wait more than 9 months before being awarded her claim. And because of this backlog, a veteran who was raising his young daughter suffered multiple hospitalizations and could not keep a civilian job due to the strains in his back and his knees, and was forced to wait 284 days for his claim to be approved. So at best, waiting over 125 days for a disability compensation claim can be frustrating and tiresome. At worst, for a veteran, it can be financially and emotionally disturbing. So the people of the United States have always taken care. We've always taken care of our veterans when they come home. And this backlog, in my opinion, is tantamount to breaking our promises to our nation's veterans and must come to an end soon. In Nevada, nearly 4,300 veterans have been waiting more than 125 days to receive a decision on their disability claim. And I'd like to share a message from a veteran wrote to me from Reno who says, "I'm a disabled vet. I use the Reno VA facilities and continue to battle the system to move a service-connected disability claims through. We have tens of thousands of battle-damaged vets that need immediate help. The system is stacked against them, and they deserve better. The VA is filled with good people working hard to do the right thing. However, the VA system itself is inflexible, unresponsible, and unreliable." So today I stand with Senator Casey, with Senator Vitter, Tester, and with us will be Heinrich and Moran, who are fighting along with our veterans to fix this system. This legislation has received and earned bipartisan support. We've received the endorsements of Veterans of Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, the American Legion, the Military Officers Associations of America, the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, because everyone from the President to members of Congress to the VA to the VSOs must work together to solve this puzzle that's been plaguing our veterans way too long. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my friend, Senator Casey.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Well, thanks very much. I want to first commend the work of Senator Heller and his staff, and my staff as well. John Richter is here somewhere. I don't know where he is, but I want to commend John's good work, and Jillian Mueller and on our staff, and so many others who made this possible. I'll start with one of the words that Senator Heller used, the word promise. This work, the report, the working group report, and the legislation that flows from it is an attempt, and I think it will be a successful attempt, to begin, and this will take a while, but to begin to fulfill the promise that we make to our veterans. I've often said that one of our obligations, those of us who happen to be elected officials, is to demonstrate whether or not we're worthy of the valor of our troops and worthy of the valor of our veterans. If we get this right, we will have passed that test. This is a test for the Congress. It's also, of course, a test for this administration or any administration. We cannot say that the federal government and those who enact policy in the federal government are worthy of the valor of our veterans unless we can say that these claims are processed more expeditiously and we substantially cut down on the number of days where claims are backlogged. I mean, can we really be satisfied or find it acceptable or in any way tolerate what we see in many states right now? For example, in Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia region, the southeastern corner of our state, 309 days is the average time period that claims are backlogged. In the region in Pittsburgh, the other corner of the state, southwestern Pennsylvania, 345 days. The idea that a veteran and their families have to wait more than a year to have their benefits processed is beyond an outrage. So there's some of the numbers that we're dealing with, but of course we have individual stories as well. I'll summarize one very briefly in a moment. I do want to say as well that even as we're in need of this legislation, that the VA has been working to bring down the numbers. And we appreciate that and we commend that. But there's a long way to go before we can say the job is done. Part of the effort that we undertake is substantially benefited by the renewed attention on veterans issues that played out even in the last couple of days and weeks. Chairman Bernie Sanders, I want to commend him for his work and those on the committee, some of whom are with us today. I want to commend the work that they're doing. We need to put that legislation back on the floor and keep working to pass it, as we're also trying to pass our legislation as well. Senator Heller read the veterans organizations that have not only supported this, they've informed us, and they are the reason that we have the body of work that's contained in the working group report. We want to thank them for that work. And we also want to thank the families that have brought this issue to our attention and given us the sense of urgency that we should all share, especially those of us in Congress and those who are serving in the administration. Here's one example from my home state of Pennsylvania. December the 14th of 2012, a 91-year-old widow of a U.S. Army veteran who has over $4,000 in monthly expenses to cover her assisted living needs was trying to get help. So she submitted a claim. All the appropriate documentation was filed as requested by the VA. Unfortunately, a year later, the claim was still under review and all of her resources were depleting. In September of 2013, now you're into the 9th or the 10th month, a request for an expedited processing was filed, but as of January of 2014, this year, her claim remained in the final stages of review. Our office at the time submitted a congressional inquiry, and within a month the claim was approved, and she finally was able to come to the end of the road. That should never, ever take that long, and it should not, in my judgment, take the intervention of a congressional office to do that. But unfortunately, that's more and more the case. I'm told that of the many thousands of active cases that our office has right now, 28% of those cases are veterans cases. So we have an obligation not just to enact the right policy and to be vigilant and determined to make sure that even after this piece of legislation is signed into law, that we work to make sure that it's implemented well and that we remain vigilant. Passing a law, implementing it well will not be the end of the story. We have a long way to go. But I believe that this bipartisan demonstration of support, as well as the sense of urgency that veterans and their families have brought to us, will help us keep moving forward. And in the end, it's about that word that Dean Heller mentioned in his remarks and I mentioned at the beginning, that word promise. We have to keep this promise. I think enacting this legislation is a substantial step in furtherance of keeping that promise. And I am honored to have the opportunity to introduce our next presenter and a co-sponsor of the legislation, Senator David Vitter of the state of Louisiana.
Thank you, Bob. I'm honored to be part of this working group, honored to be a co-sponsor of the legislation. You know, I think it's significant that this is a fully bipartisan exercise because veterans are a completely bipartisan priority, and we need to keep it that way and keep the debate that way. Secondly, I think a big part of this struggle is, basic competence in government and making government work. I think across the board, whether it's in the VA or many other agencies, Americans, one of their top frustrations with government, even as we have debates about should government be bigger or smaller, a fundamental frustration is just government isn't working. It's not competent. It's not doing its job. And unfortunately, this backlog is a perfect example of that. In some categories, we're devoting the most money ever to claims. We're devoting the most people ever. And the backlog is longer than ever. Something's not working. And that's what we're attempting to get a hold of, including through the reforms in this legislation. So I do think it's an important bipartisan effort to make government work right and to properly honor those folks who have sacrificed so much for all of us. And now the next presenter is Jon Tester of Montana.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you to Dean Heller and Bob Casey for all their leadership in this particular area. We all know, all of us in this room knows that when somebody fights for their country, when they put it on the line, when they sacrifice for all of us, it is critically important that we live up to the promises we make to them. Folks who get injured not only have the injuries themselves, but their family also has to deal with some enormous problems. And too many folks don't take this price of war into account when we go into battle, but it needs to be taken into account, and it's why I'm standing here today. Because the folks here that I'm standing with are committed to this issue and know they can't take the eye off the ball. Veterans must get their benefits that they have earned in a timely and efficient way. This bill lays out clear guidelines of much needed transparency and how to make the VA and the Department of Defense work together to speed up this claim process. This is something that we need to get fixed. The matter of the fact is that there are a number of reasons for this claims backlog, some of them that Congress created. Not only do we have folks surviving much more terrible injuries than they ever have before, and thank God for that, but we also opened up an incredible claims opportunity for the Vietnam vets a few Congresses ago. So that, and those folks went to the front of the line. And so it has extended the claims backlog somewhat, but it was for the right reasons. And so as we move forward here and address the backlog issue, it's going to take all of us working together. This is bipartisan in nature. The bottom line is if we all work together, if we work with the DOD and the VA and help facilitate their communication, the bottom line is the veterans will receive what they deserve, the benefits that they've earned, and they deserve no less than that. And with that, I will turn it back to Senator Heller for questions.
Any questions? Steve?
Senator Heller, if your reforms are put in place, do you have any estimate as to how much time it might save your average claim or how much it might cut into the backlog?
Well, first of all, keep in mind that Reno's backlog is the worst in the country. I've been making that statement, and I know that most of the reasons that these senators are here today is because we have the best and we have the worst, and unfortunately most of us fall under the worst. But Reno office is in dire shape, and It's now my understanding that there are going to be some changes made in that particular VARO, which hopefully, just in leadership changes over there, it'll make some good difference. No, the key is that we're not here 5 years from now having the same conversation. In your booklet, you'll see the charts of how long this has been going on and how since 2005, literally, that we've made very little improvement. In fact, we're moving backwards instead of forwards. And there's reasons for that. You know, two active wars obviously contributed to that. Acts of Congress, as Senator Tester talked about. Regulations, new regulations. Every time there's a judicial change, it causes and pushes the backlog, or will push the backlog up. What we're trying to do is move this to the 21st century. Right now, the system that we have works for World War II veterans. This is the same system that we had in the 1940s, and what we're trying to do is drag this system into the 21st century through e-commerce, through the ways that they can file their claims, make sure that these veterans are better understanding of the process of getting through the system. If they can have a complete claim, and do that right the first time, they can find out that they can get through these systems much quicker. So there's an education component to it. There's the relationship between the Veterans Administration, the Department of Defense, making sure that those two departments are talking, and this is all in this legislation, and frankly, it's part of this this booklet also. But it's my hope, and truly, that we'll get to levels that we believe to be responsible and accountable as far as members of Congress, as that is to get that below 125 days. We'll get this legislation through. It may take a couple of years. Keep in mind, if you take a look at some of the charts on there, what is unfortunate is in 2005, we had over 100, each FTE could move 100 files a year. We're under 75 now. So what is it? What's the difference between 2005 and today, in that these employees cannot move as many claims as they could just a few years ago? These are the things that we're trying to approach and trying to find out what are the resources that are needed in order to achieve that. That's what this study is all about. And first of all, we need to understand our problems. That's the key, is to understand our problems, know where we came from, know where we are today, and know what we want to achieve. There's a lot of transparency in this, and you'll see that also in this work. So that the VAROs, so the administration, so the veterans themselves understand and know what the expectations are and when this work can get done. So it's my goal that we won't be having the same conversation 5 years from now, but keep in mind that training one FTE takes 2 years. 2 years. So if they're going to need more bodies, if that's the kind of resources they need, obviously with the electronic filings and the movement between DoD and Veterans Affairs, obviously all this is going to come together and hopefully solve this problem. There's no silver bullet. You know, we've been. Senator Casey and I have been talking about there, what is the silver bullet? There is no silver bullet. It's going to take a lot of things to come together. That's what this backlog working group is all about. Find out what are all the pieces. Let's bring all these pieces together, of course, produce the legislation.
I do want to let the senators know that we're a few minutes into a 15-minute roll call vote.
Anybody else want to respond?
Let me just add, I was just looking at a part of the report. One of the best features of this report is how practical it is. It doesn't just have broad themes or recommendations. To give you an example, you look under the first section where we get into kind of the recommendations, page 21, here's how specific it is. Part of what the team putting this report together wanted the system to do is direct the VA to message resource information to a veteran through e-benefits and additional methods. This is how they do it. The proposal would direct the VA to automatically send any person who establishes a username and password at the e-benefits website a message outlining the benefits of filling an FTC and whether or not the individual can go to obtain assistance. I mean, just that basic direct contact by using technology better, by having a more streamlined system. So I think if we can get legislation like this passed, it's going to be undergirded by the very specific recommendations. And the good news is we listen to a lot of veterans, and they know the system better than any public official does, and their families do. So that's why the report is specifically tailored to very basic problems they have with accessing their benefits.
Yeah.
Since you started working on the report and since you put the working group together, the backlog has dropped fairly dramatically by about 200,000 cases. So do you feel that that's not sustainable as it is right now, or is this extra work needs to be done on top of it? I mean, at the current pace, they are ready to meet that 2015 goal.
Yeah, I'll talk to
Good
it.
question.
Yeah, I think what this legislation is about, help facilitate folks to go as fast as it possibly can. And I give kudos to the VA for reducing that backlog. I know the government shutdown didn't help them. It kind of rolled it back a little bit, but they're moving forward. The electronic medical records between the DOD and the VA, very, very important because they're still using paper records in DOD. This is all about communication, facilitating the communication, making sure that the agencies are working together to benefit the veterans. And if we can get that backlog rolled back to zero tomorrow, it's a win for everybody.
And do keep in mind that backlog that they were able to reduce were those only 2 years and further out. So what they did is they reduced it down to 2 years. So this thing bounces around quite a bit. And we're not looking to, what we don't want are those bounces. We want a VA that's prepared for under any circumstances that we can keep this application process below 125 days. But those 200,000 you're talking about are those that they have pushed through that were older than 2 years. So we're still within the 2-year window of these applications.
Tracy?
Tracy?
What's the cost of this and how are you gonna pay for it?
Well,
Hasn't been
there's
scored
no
yet. Hasn't
there's
been
no
scored.
score on it. But I'll tell you, you look at these recommendations and you go one after another. This is a fairly basic set of recommendations in terms of process. And look, I think that the bipartisan support for this and the sense of urgency that I talked about is so substantial that I think we're going to be okay to be able to find not just the resources, but the support to support any additional resources. But we'll see what the score indicates, and we'll work through that.
The other thing I would just say very briefly is this is bipartisan. We've got folks from everything from liberal to conservative across the board on this. The soldiers, the servicemen and women have already paid. We need to step up and do right by them. And I think that message can be said on both the Republican and the Democratic side of the aisle.
I'd just add, look, we'll deal with any score we get, but a lot of these things shouldn't cost anything. When, the productivity of the average caseload worker is fallen 25% in a few years, something wrong, and we should be able to fix that without spending new money. And a lot of the report and a lot of the recommendations go to that.
One more question, Corinne.
I just wanted to know, there was a package of bills addressing this similar issue that came out of the House late last year, and I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about how your effort lines up with a dozen, or where the connection disconnect would be with what's going on.
What's going on in the House? I'm not 100% sure which bill you're talking about specifically. We just,
Backlog reducing bill.
right, and that's fine. We'll probably take a look at that and start having conversations with the House. Right now, we just want to get something out of the Senate so that we can continue that conversation. If there's a bill that was in this cycle, obviously those two bills would go to conference, and hopefully we'd be able to iron it out. So we'll leave it at that.
I agree.
Bob, thank you.
Thanks so much. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Is it?
You talk about the Dino office, you report on